You've probably seen crypto news sites buzzing with headlines like this one from Crypto Basic about why August 15th might be huge for XRP. I want to break this down for you using insights from two different lawyers, one who's active in the XRP community and another who used to work at the SEC, so they really know their stuff. There's been tons of chatter in the community about what all this actually means, and honestly, some of the theories out there make me roll my eyes a bit. But I figured I'd help clear things up with a quick update. Plus, there's another exciting development that's going to be fantastic news for XRP. Check out this story from Cointelegraph about the SEC approving in-kind creations and redemptions for crypto ETPs. I'll walk you through exactly what this means in simple terms. But first, let me throw out my usual disclaimer. I'm definitely not a finance expert. I'm not giving you investment advice, and please don't make any buying or selling decisions based on what I share here. Here's the latest from CoinGape with a pretty interesting headline. XRP lawsuit, Ripple and SEC may dismiss appeals before August 15th, says lawyer. So we've got this August 15th deadline for the status report coming up, and former SEC lawyer Mark Fagel is actually feeling optimistic about how things might play out in the XRP case. He thinks there's a good chance both Ripple and the SEC will end up dropping their appeals before that deadline hits. I'll walk you through exactly what he's been saying about all this. Quick side note though, there's been some buzz in the community about supposed secret meetings between the SEC and Ripple happening behind closed doors. But here's the reality. There's absolutely no proof any of these meetings actually took place. It's all just speculation and rumors flying around. Though I have a pretty good idea what people might be misinterpreting. My guess? They're probably referring to something that's become incredibly routine, and I mean this happens so regularly, I've completely lost count over the past few years. The SEC holds these weekly meetings where they chat about various broad topics, but they never share the nitty-gritty details with the public. You'll spot these Sunshine Act notices on the SEC's website pretty much every single week. Case in point, there's literally one scheduled for tomorrow, July 31st, 2025. And sure enough, there was another one just a week ago because this is basically their standard weekly routine. And here's the part I've highlighted on screen. This is what gets certain folks in the XRP community absolutely fired up, especially back when we were all talking about potential settlement talks in the SEC versus Ripple case. This kind of language catches people's attention, and they immediately jump to conclusions that it must be about Ripple, even though it's really not. Every so often, this stuff starts making the rounds and goes viral in the XRP community, and then I end up having to create videos explaining why this is completely off base and not what people think it is. But you can totally see why this language gets everyone excited. Here's what it actually says. The subject matter of the closed meeting will consist of the following topics: institution and settlement of injunctive actions, institution and settlement of administrative proceedings, resolution of litigation claims, and other matters relating to examinations and enforcement proceedings. Now, you can imagine how broad that is. It could literally be about anything, and that's exactly what people do. They let their imaginations run wild and assume it's all about their favorite case. I'm pretty sure this is what's being talked about in posts like this one from Crypto Crows, an XRP community member who wrote, SEC just holds their fourth closed-door meeting on Ripple's appeal. A delay could hold up XRP spot ETF approvals, but if they drop the appeal, the next breakout could be explosive. Look, if there's actually something else being referenced here, something beyond these standard Sunshine Act notices I mentioned, I'm definitely open to hearing about it. But honestly, every single time I've seen claims like this, it always traces back to these routine weekly notices. So that's my educated guess about what's really going on here. Now, about this idea that if we don't get the resolution we're hoping for, it'll somehow hold up spot XRP ETFs, I really don't buy that at all. This whole appeal situation has nothing to do with XRP's actual legal status as a digital asset. We're talking about issues involving a company that's part of the XRP ecosystem, sure, but that's totally different. It would honestly be pretty mind-blowing if anything related to Ripple could actually block a spot XRP ETF from moving forward. I just don't see any realistic way this could negatively impact what's happening on the ETF front. So that's actually some encouraging news. Now here's where it gets interesting. Attorney Mark Fagel, who's a former SEC lawyer and really knows how all this stuff works behind the scenes, came out and directly challenged this claim. He flat out said, they have not held 4 closed-door meetings on the appeal. And honestly, Mark has spent the last few years constantly having to correct these kinds of claims, especially when they involve people misunderstanding those Sunshine Act notices I mentioned earlier. So I'm pretty sure that's exactly what he's thinking happened here. Crypto Crows actually responded pretty politely saying, "Thanks, Mark. Fair point. Not all 4 meetings were explicitly labeled Ripple Appeal, but in context, there's reason to watch closely. Closed-door SEC sessions ahead of ETF rulings, never just routine." But here's the thing. That's just not accurate. These meetings are absolutely routine, happening week after week, and they're definitely not labeled for Ripple or any specific case, unless there's something completely different being referenced here that I somehow missed, which would be pretty surprising. I find it really hard to believe there are these big, super exciting SEC Ripple appeal meetings happening in secret. Trust me, if something like that was actually going down, it would be headline news everywhere. There's no way I wouldn't have heard about it. This is just their standard weekly routine. But then Attorney Fagel came back with some really important clarification. He said, they will meet on the topic of dismissing the appeal a single time. Obviously, it hasn't happened yet, and since the agenda is confidential, nobody outside the SEC will know they have approved dismissing it until they file papers. Everything else people are saying is make-believe. And honestly, that matches what I've been seeing too. Look, I absolutely love our community, but I'm just going to be straight with you here. There are quite a few folks who have some pretty wild imaginations. Someone will throw out an idea, and before you know it, it's being passed around as if it's stone cold fact from some official source. I've watched this happen way too many times. Then someone else jumped in with a great question for Attorney Fagel. Does the SEC have a deadline to report to the appellate court? Is it August 15th, or is that something different? Mark's response was really helpful. I believe that's the date for the parties to report on their status of their appeals. It doesn't mean it's a hard deadline by which they must file their dismissal papers, but I assume they will try to do so before then. So he's actually expecting this whole thing to get wrapped up within the next couple of weeks, which would be absolutely fantastic news. Now, even though XRP already has complete legal clarity and the whole war on crypto is basically over, this is exactly the kind of news that could, and I'm not making any predictions here, but it could potentially send XRP markets absolutely wild on a global scale. We're still in a bull run right now, even though the market's pulling back a bit as I'm recording this, but that's totally normal, nothing crazy happening here. This kind of pullback actually happens all the time, even right before the most euphoric parts of bull runs, so I'm definitely not worried about it. But if you get news like this hitting at just the right moment, well, things could get pretty exciting pretty fast. So I'll definitely be keeping my eyes peeled for that. Here's what attorney Bill Morgan from the XRP community had to say about all this. The SEC has not withdrawn the appeal in the Ripple matter yet. There is no deadline on the SEC to withdraw the appeal. However, the SEC needs to report to the appeal court by August 15th, 2025, which acts as a deadline for the SEC to do something, although it may just ask for more time. We will hear something about the matter in the next 2 weeks. So it sounds like he's pretty much on the same page as Attorney Fagel. Something's probably going to happen sooner rather than later. We'll just have to wait and see exactly how it all plays out. But honestly, don't be shocked if this whole thing gets wrapped up way faster than we might expect. Now let's talk about this other big story. SEC approves in-kind creations and redemptions for crypto ETPs. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has given the green light for in-kind creation and redemption for cryptocurrency exchange-traded products. And just so we're clear, ETFs are actually a type of ETP. So this is pretty broad coverage here. What this basically means is that it gives authorized representatives the ability to swap shares directly for the actual underlying crypto assets instead of having to deal with cash transactions. In their Tuesday announcement, the securities regulators said that approved Bitcoin and Ether funds can now create and redeem shares on an in-kind basis. SEC Chairman Paul Atkins made a pretty telling statement. It's a new day at the SEC, and a key priority of my chairmanship is developing a fit-for-purpose regulatory framework for crypto asset markets. Atkins explained that these new rules are going to make crypto ETPs both less expensive and way more efficient to operate. Jamie Selway, who's the director of the Division of Trading and Markets at the SEC, put it perfectly. In-kind creations and redemption provide flexibility and cost savings to ETP issuers, authorized participants, and investors, resulting in a more efficient market. Now, here's why this is such a big deal, especially for future XRP spot ETFs that will eventually get approved. Before this change, if you wanted to sell your spot XRP ETF, you could definitely do it. But here's the catch. You couldn't actually get XRP back as your redemption. You just get cash dollars. So let's say you wanted actual XRP instead of cash. Well, tough luck. You'd have to sell your ETF for dollars and then take those dollars and go buy XRP yourself in a separate transaction. That creates all kinds of unnecessary friction and hassle in the market. But now there are other ways to handle this, and this approval just opens up so many more possibilities. This is absolutely something that never would have happened under the previous administration. It's just another example of how things are changing for the better, and it's going to make life so much easier for regular investors. Plus, there's going to be way fewer transactions overall, which means fewer trading fees eating into people's returns. It's just one more reason why people are going to be much more excited and comfortable about jumping into spot ETFs because they know they'll have way more flexibility when it comes time to exit their positions. Pretty cool stuff. It's just another positive step forward, and I'm really happy to see this kind of progress. And hey, just my usual reminder, I'm definitely not a financial advisor, so please don't buy or sell anything based on what I'm sharing here.